Hello, everyone. My name is Jen, and welcome to the Book Refuge. All right, first off, let's address the frog in the room, which is in my throat right now. And I do have another very large thermos of tea, which I will be slurping, and I'll do my best to cut those clips out, but sometimes they're just going to pop in, and I apologize. But I've been guzzling that tea for the last 2 days, and it is mostly taking effect here. And honestly, I feel all right. I love that tea. It is a medicine ball tea that I make based off of a Starbucks recipe, but it's way cheaper if you make it at home, like way, way cheaper if you make it at home. And yeah, I feel pretty good. The cold hasn't like set in anywhere. It's all like up here, but that does make me sound a bit obnoxious, and I apologize for that. But yeah, we'll see. I would say that we'll make this video quick and painless, but that's not likely to happen because I have a lot to gush about this week, and I'm not going to be stymied by my body trying to hold me back. Okay, so you're just going to have to suffer through with me. Because we got some good freaking books to talk about, and I'm excited, and I haven't been this excited in a hot minute. Well, maybe it just feels like that, but I'm fucking excited to talk about the books that I read in this last week. But first off, we have to welcome some new channel members, and thank you so much. Every time I'm like unsure if I want to continue with channel memberships, I get a flood of new people joining, and you all are so supportive there. You know, I'm so happy that I have both channel memberships and Patreon because both are so vital to doing what I do here. And so yeah, I'm just so thankful always. And so I want to welcome Roxanne, Alana, and the lovely Tamil. I mean, I'm sure you are completely lovely, Tamil, but that's also the name of the person who signed up. Welcome to my channel memberships. And channel memberships here at the Book Refuge include, depending on the level, early access to videos, getting to vote on video topics, as well as a monthly live chat with me, which this month is going to be a little later than normal. I think it's going to be next week just because I'm so behind on Patreon stuff for November and getting ready for the end of the year that it'll probably be next week, I think, is when it's going to be. But that's life, you know, that's life. But welcome. I'm so happy to have you. So a little bit of what was going on this week before we get into everything going on. So I went on a little trip with my sister and my nieces, and we met my cousins in Duluth, Minnesota, and we went to this place called Bentleyville, which is on the edge of Lake Superior, where all these Christmas lights get put up. And it was this little trip, and that's where I actually ended up getting sick because I was around 7 children, ages 4 to 13, and you can bet that I didn't get off easy, okay? But it was a lovely, lovely trip, and on that trip is when I binged some of these books I'm about to talk about, and it was absolutely delightful. And I did get sidetracked from my TBR, and I don't care because it was so much fun. It was so much fun. And this week overall, I had nothing below a 4-star read. I had fun all the way through. And so, you know, when I get to this time of the month and I'm looking at the stack of books I have to read versus the ones I want to read, it's that struggle of being someone who reads for a living, who also loves to read more than anything else. Is there are tough decisions that had to be made. But what are you going to do? You know, it was so much fun. So yeah, let's dive into what got read though. Because first we got to rewind back to the beginning of the week. And that was when I was coming back from Thanksgiving weekend. Okay, so I came back from Thanksgiving, and when I got back that day is when I filmed the weekly wrap up last week. And I had just finished, I think the last one I talked about, well, I think I had DNF'd Walking in Darkness or something, and we did the monthly wrap up, but I just finished up like Sweet Venom or something like that. And I started on the way home, The Hermit is what I had started, because I I've had, that one was on my 10 before the end. I read a lot of Michelle Hurd this year. And in fact, I put up my top 10 Mafia, which the rest of December is basically going to be my top 10 videos. I love doing that every year. Every Thursday, and probably some of the other days of the week too, are going to be my like top 10 videos. And I did my top 10 Mafia, and it was like half of it was Michelle Hurd because I just enjoy her book so much. But I'm getting caught up on her backlist. I still have this series to catch up on. But I listened to The Hermit, and this was narrated by, I love the audiobooks, by the way. And this was narrated by Ryan West and Helena Wall. And it's a dual narration. And the characters were Dominic and Grace. And this one was very interesting. So this was a new series. And I'm sure it connects to her world somehow. I didn't really see how it did. It felt like it's starting kind of a new syndicate or a new group or something. I didn't really catch it. But all of her Mafia worlds kind of connect, so I'm assuming that it will at some point somehow. I just didn't catch it. But in this one, we have Grace and her sister Sierra, or Kiara, Sierra, however we're saying it. And they're at a like party. Her father's like throwing a get together, and these men break in. The Bratva breaks in and tries to kidnap both her and her sister. And her sister's able to hide, but she gets kidnapped. Now, Grace is already a widow, actually. She was already forced in to one arranged marriage, and she did that on the promise that her younger sister would get to marry for love. Okay, it was one of those scenarios. And she was married to this man who basically, forced her into their marital relation. She didn't try to woo her or win her over. He was like, this was a property exchange and you're now mine. So she endured all that until he was finally killed off. And now she's back under her father's roof. And her father, he feels horrible about how that all went down. But he also is like, that's the Mafia way, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. So she gets kidnapped by the Bratva, and they're going to try to torture her to get her father to like give over the like codes to his weapons, basically, because he is an arms dealer. And he luckily is able to call in Dominic. Okay. And Dominic, our hero, is the Hermit. And Dominic is, as his name suggests, a hermit who is very good at extracting people, very good at getting in, getting out, for a price, of course. And so he goes in, he rescues Grace. And then there's a cost. And the cost that he wants from Grace's dad is half of his business. He wants in on the trade. And there's also this like group that's formed between some different crime syndicates or whatever. But Dominic wants in on the weapons trade, and also to help him stand up against the Bratva, because, from then on, if Grace's dad isn't the only one who holds the keys to the weapons, the Bratva can't leverage everything against him, right? But the dad is like, well, I can't just hand this over. And he's like, yeah, you can. Because we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And he's like, whoa. How about we make it a family connection? I will give you my younger daughter, Kiara, as your bride. And then it will be a family connection. And so I'll give you half my business, but we'll be family. And then, he's also like, I'll save face a little bit because I won't just be handing you over half of my kingdom or blah, blah, blah. And Dominic is like, okay, fine. It'll be a marriage in name only. I'm not interested in this weak young girl. But Grace gets wind of this, and she is like, absolutely fuck no. Not only did I just get tortured by this guy, you already married me off to someone who is a psychopath who raped and beat me. I did that so my sister could marry for love, and now you're going to hand her over to this guy who, sure, he rescued me, but she doesn't have any great faith that he wouldn't, force his marital rights on her sister and blah, blah, blah. And as Dominic sees Grace standing up for her sister and putting her foot down and consistently like standing up for her, he starts to become attracted to her instead. And so, of course, he's like, wait. Now the deal is I want her instead. So let's make a little switcheroo. And Grace absolutely doesn't want that. But she's like, fine, whatever. I'm already broken. He can have me and my sister can be free or whatever. But of course, he's going to treat her like the sweet and treasure that she is. And I've said enough. And it's Michelle Hurd. And you're going to love it. And he's going to bring her the blood of her enemies. And you're going to... I loved it. I loved it. If you saw my top 10 Mafia, you know that this book squeezed its way in as a 5-star read. So I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale because it did like take its time into it. And this did have trigger warnings of like blackmail, domestic abuse, sexual assault in the past by her partner. But she does have some PTSD from that. And I will say, though our hero doesn't sexually assault her, there is a scene early on where he triggers it. He's trying to scare her in a scene. He just doesn't realize that he is triggering an assault memory from her husband. So, I mean, once he finds that out, he wants to like cut off his own arm. But just know that. But in general, Michelle Hurd does sometimes throw some pretty hard trigger warnings in. But in general, like she also writes some very soft for her heroes. So love it. Love it, love it, love it. I just gobbled it up. And Ryan West and Helena Walters did a wonderful job. And this was a pretty quick read. Like this was only like 270 pages. The audiobook was only 7.5 hours, which means on 2 times speed, I listened to it in basically my trip home with a little bit afterwards. So that's why I love Michelle Hurd. She's a palate cleanser for me. And I'm really sad that she's now like the audiobooks for the rest of this series aren't like caught up. She's behind on them. Normally she's been like day and date with her audiobook releases, but she's like behind on some of them now, which is sad for me. But that's okay. I'll wait. I adore her audiobooks. Next, I just gotta pop this in real quick. I finished my reread with my friend Sarah. We have been rereading East together. If you are a longtime viewer of this channel, and I mean, if you've been around a long time, no, one of my very, very, very first videos that I ever did was of East. But I've talked about it many, many times since then. This is my favorite book of all time. I mean it even more than Outlander, although Outlander's a completely different level, but East is my earliest and favoritist story. I mean, I read it 10 years before I read Outlander, so that's what I mean. And it is particularly special between Sarah and I. And we've read it together many, many times over the years, actually. I've read it without her as well. Actually, this copy isn't the one I read with her. I read her copy to her. This copy is actually annotated by both my friend Joe and my friend Murphy. Because we did this copy as a traveling book. I own 5 copies of East. But anyway, my friend Sarah and her husband are moving into their first home. And while she was packing all the fiddly things in their home, I was reading East to her because, as I said, we've read this book together multiple times since we were, I think 12 was maybe the first time. So for 20 years, we've shared this book together. I think I'm right in saying that. How old is this book? I always got to double check that I'm not wrong about that. Yes, I am right about that. This book is 22 years old. So yeah, for about, I say maybe we've read it, the first time we read it together was maybe like 17 years ago. But it is a middle grade story, but it is beautiful. It is a retelling of the like Norwegian myth, East of the Sun, West of the Moon. It's also kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's also something that Sarah J. Maas has admitted she used as inspiration for Court of Thorns and Roses. You'll see bits and pieces in it, but it's about this very poor family who has 7 children, and one of their children gets very ill, and this enchanted white bear who has been cursed by a troll queen comes to their home and offers them to save their sick daughter in exchange for their youngest daughter, Rose, going with him to stay in his enchanted castle. And he doesn't explain any more than that. He just says, if she comes away with me, I'll heal your daughter. And the father and the other siblings are like, what the hell? That doesn't make any sense. No, we're not exchanging one daughter for the other. But Rose, who is very brave and maybe a little bit foolish, but brave and willing to do anything, she takes that up and she goes with this white bear. And when she arrives in this enchanted castle, she wonders why she's there. And she starts to particularly start to wonder why she's there when at night in the room that she stays in, all the candles go out and someone starts coming in to sleep on the other side of the bed from her. Now, again, this is a middle grade book, so there's nothing nefarious or perturbed happening. But who is that person? Because it's certainly not a bear. Who is that person sleeping on the other side of the bed from her? And what is happening? And why was she chosen? And why is a bear able to talk? And why was her sister able to be healed? And all these things. I adore this story with my whole heart and soul. And it's funny because rereading it, I've reread this. I can't even tell you how many times. Like on my I can't remember. On my Goodreads, it says I've read it maybe 6 times, but I was reading this far before I ever even heard of a Goodreads. You know, I've literally been reading it since 2005, 20 years. And I love it even more as an adult. Like I do. I just think it's so well done. And there's so many layers to it. And whether or not Edith Patow could ever have understood that about it, there's just something that I find so clever. And even like as an adult, I relate to different characters even more as I grow older. This time around, I had a lot more empathy for the mother character, who is always made to be very foolish and superstitious and the cause of a lot of like problems. And honestly, I felt for her a lot in here this time around. And honestly, I cried many times, like both Sarah and I do, because there's so much love in this little poor family who's just trying to keep it together, and they try to make the right decisions. And yes, they're superstitious about certain things, but all they have is each other and love, and they're thrown into this fantastical situation, and they just try to make the best decisions that they can. And then Rose goes on this absolutely impossible epic journey, and all she has is her heart and her smarts and her will to survive and her, I mean, it's a pun because of the story, but her moral compass of right and wrong, and her belief that she must fix a wrong that she has done, which isn't even her wrong to begin with. Like, in all honesty, it's this evil troll queen and what she's done 150 years before our story even begins. But I love it so much. So this is beyond a 6-star, but it's listed as one of my 6 stars in my rating system. But anytime that I'll reread this one and talk about it, I have so many of you who say you've read it through the years too. And like I said, I have 5 different copies of this book, but I actually had one of you, I think, was it Allie, one of my patrons, who did have me annotate this for her, and I was so happy when she picked that. I think that was last year. But I didn't have to fully reread that when I did that one for her because I've already annotated it before. So this was the first time I'd reread it, I think, in 3 years. And the last time that Sarah and I had started it together, we didn't finish it because stuff came up. So this was the first time in, I think, like 6 years that we fully read it together all the way through, and I just love it. And, you know, I don't know, maybe the next time we're reading it together, we'll be like reading it to one of her children or something. I don't know. That would be very interesting, but I just love it. I think this is so well done. And honestly, this is my favorite book of all time, and I'll hear nothing else. I think it is a perfect story. It's fairy tale. It's one of the most pure and sweet, like love stories too. And don't talk to me about West that came after it. Sarah has never read that one, where she actually has asked me that because we will need to unpack her new house now. We've packed up and they're moving everything into that actually today. The big stuff's getting moved over, and she's asked me to actually read West to her. So I'm going to give West a second chance. There actually is a review of West on my channel as well. No, I'm not going to link it because it's very old and I don't like to link the old videos. I'm sorry. You can hunt it down if you want. But I'm going to give that one a second chance and see, but I really didn't care for West. I don't like a perfect, like a fairy tale that's just perfectly encapsulated. I don't think it needs to be revisited, and literally, I won't say it, but there's things that get undone, and I'm like, no, you don't undo that. It's perfectly told. Foolish, don't do that. But Sarah's never read it, and I was like, okay, I'll read that one to you. That's fine. But yeah. So anyway, that I wasn't going to talk so long about that, but it's my favorite book ever. And it's just a great one. I recommend it to everyone. It doesn't matter your age, because I've recommended it to full, I know that people who read it when they're young, it's easier for the nostalgia to get you. And when I've had adults read it, sometimes they start it off and it can be hard to be in the right headspace to do it. But I think winter's the perfect time for it because you spend a lot of time in it. But I think if you can just go into it and just let yourself have a little bit of childlike wonder, don't think about it too hard. But also, it is a very clever book, and things that you think maybe don't make sense or you question it, I think by the end of the story, you'll find the author does answer a lot of those questions, and there isn't really much that's done by accident, because again, I've read that book infinite amount of times, and there isn't much I can pick apart about it because it kind of all is in there. And there aren't many stories you can say that about, that after 22 years of scrutiny, I just still think it's a perfect book. So nostalgia will take you miles. Right. Now let's hop in to some more fun. This is going to be a very long weekly wrap up. I don't give two shits because like I said, I had a wonderful week, right? We're riding high. Because then what happened, all right? Because I finished The Hermit on that Saturday. And then that night was when I caved and I got HBO Max because they were having the holiday weekend deal. And it was $2.99 a month for the year because Heated Rivalry was out. And I caved, you guys. I saw the previews for it and I was unaware that this was coming out, okay? And I know I'm not the only one this happened to because I wasn't getting any of the ads on my Instagram. It wasn't showing up, okay? None of my friends had really posted about it yet. I mean, that has happened since, but they hadn't yet. So I hadn't really seen anything yet. And then, of course, like, it was Saturday and it was out, and so everyone was posting about it. And HBO was hammering me with, like, it's now on HBO, so you can watch it, $2.99. And I was like, if I don't get it when it's $2.99 a month, then I'll be bummed out. So I snagged it. And then when I got home and I'd filmed my video and done everything, I was like, okay, you need to get everything done for the day before you sit and watch this, because I had a feeling I would like it. Now, a little bit more backstory. I'm going somewhere with this, obviously. I have read Game Changer. And I read Game Changer... I meant to look this up. I read Game Changer years ago. I'm pretty positive on a recommendation of one of you guys. It might even have been a viewer recommendation from the forum. I should have looked that. Which is book 1 in the series. Game Changer, the Game Changer series, Game Changer book 1. And I think it was on the AnyPlay app back then, because I listened to the audio. And I liked it. I didn't have like any problems with it. I thought it was cute, but I wasn't like really urgently going to continue it. Obviously I didn't. But I did like buy book 2, the ebook. But I didn't get around to it. So I had Heated Rivalry on my Kindle. So we'll just say that. Okay, I had it on my Kindle. So I was like, oh, Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. All right. But I was a tad confused because, again, I read Game Changer. And I was like, but isn't this about, like, Scott? Like, I was just confused. Anyway, but I saw the trailer and I was seeing all the clips and I was seeing all the sexiness. And I'm like, what is going on? All right. So, sweet little me sat down and watched episode 1 and 2. Okay. This weekly recap isn't supposed to be a review of the show, I know, but it plays a big part of the next 2 books that I read, okay, that derailed my weekend TBR, All right. Okay. Because immediately upon finishing episode 2, which again, I won't talk about those because I don't want to like spoil it for anyone else. But there's a little cliffhanger at the end of episode 2 for what's happening with Shane and Ilya. And again, I'm about to talk about the books, so I will then backtrack and talk about that couple and everything. But there was a cliffhanger, and I was like, oh, hell no. I need to know what happens right now. And I knew that I had bought that book. So it was then, I think, when was it? It wasn't too late at night. I think it was like 8 p.m. on Saturday that I just picked it up. And then I kind of skimmed through those first 2 episodes worth of book. Because they were very, again, I'll talk about that in a second. And I got to where the cliffhanger part is, and then I read through the rest of it all that night. I stayed up and finished it. And then I immediately purchased Long Game. Because that's the thing, these aren't on KU. That is the bummer. And the physical books aren't available for Heated Rivalry, which we won't get into. We're all pissed about that. Like, fucking mistake. Biggest mistake of their lives not to have backstock ready for that, okay? That is one of the positives of Amazon, of their print on demand, okay? Because the amount of money that would be rolling in right now if you could get that print on demand, and the fact that they don't have a movie tie-in or TV, whatever, you know what I mean, ready of this poster, when we suffer through TV tie-ins and not that they're all bad, okay? They're not all bad. Some of them are fine. But like, think of all of the Twilight movie tie-ins that are just the stupid movie poster. Like, I bought a few of those, the mass market ones that I bought a few of those, the ones the airport has. The fact that they didn't have, bam, this ready to effing go is a horrible marketing mistake. Get that going. Get Kip and Scott's ready to go, and get Ilya and Shane out there. Get that. You would be printing money. Let's go. Anyway, rant happening. So anyway, that being said, these next 2 books I'm going to talk about are Heated Rivalry and The Long Game, because you guys, I cannot tell you how exciting and thrilling it was to just be binging something and to just feel so sucked in that, like, I couldn't put it down. Now, I was reading The Long Game because the long game is long. The book is long. Both Heated Rivalry and The Long Game are pretty long. And The Long Game I was reading during my trip in Duluth, which, yeah, it's pretty smutty one. And I was sneaking like bits of it the whole trip that I was on it. And I had my audio of Mountain Grump, which will be the next book that I talk about. So I was switching between, like, when I had time for an audiobook, I was listening to that in the car, which is also a very long audiobook. And then when I had time to, like, have my Kindle out, I was reading The Long Game, and I just couldn't put it down because I just love them so much. So all of that discombobulated stuff, I have a few things to say. One, unfortunately, I do have to tell you that these horny little hockey guys are absolutely darling and adorable, and they rip my heart out, and I love them. Okay, I love them so much. They're absolutely worth it. The TV show is worth it. Holy shit, it was so good. It's so romantic. I'm contemplating waiting till the show will be done because they're only doing 6 episodes of it, and it's only on 5 Fridays. Like, it will end, honestly, I think it's done, like, the day after Christmas or something. So I think I'm going to watch, like, the whole show, and I'll do a recap of it and talk about how romantic it was and what I hope this will mean for romance adaptations going forward, and the fact that a gay romance, or like a queer romance, finally tapped into what needs to be happening in romance. And I don't just mean about the sex, okay? I don't. But they did do the sex right and the intimacy right, and not just showing people jackhammering away at each other like they did in 365, and making it almost like something that could be laughed at. Like, this was deeply sexy and emotional, and like, and also straight off the fucking page for the first 2 episodes. So anyway, I just had to get that out because the reason why I jumped right into these books and couldn't put it down, and why these 2 haven't left my brain, and why And why, if you are like, why is everyone talking about them? It's because the show tapped into it, y'all. They tapped into it. And it's about more than just it being this gay hockey couple. It's about how they're tapping into the romance market that isn't being served on TV. People keep trying to do it. And in my opinion, it's what Outlander does for me. Like, and they're completely different stories, and they're almost completely different markets. But that same respect for the romance and not making it shameful or like just to like, oh, we have to do this for the ladies to shut them up. Like, and it also, again, it's what Bridgerton almost tried to do, but then they had to, I don't know. This is why I have to make a whole video about that, and I need to see what the show fully does. Because again, just inherently by the fact that it's an romance, they're tackling issues. Like, they are, because it's an romance. But that's also, like, the focus of the show, but yet the focus is them being in love. So you're tackling the issue without shoving it in your face every second. Does that make sense? I don't know. To me, that's where, like, Bridgerton failed, because they felt like it was so important to be shoving that in your face every second, when instead the fact that the show exists and that it was being made by women for women should have been the statement, in fact. And that's what Heated Rivalry is doing, is that it's a queer romance made by a queer man, written by a queer woman. That should be the statement. I don't know if that makes sense, right? I mean, at least it's a statement to me, and I'm a straight woman, and I'm like, that's a statement being made to me, and I appreciate the statement. I don't know. I don't know if that's how it feels, but that's how it feels to me. I feel like I'm understanding the statement, and I appreciate it. I don't know. So, it's not that I'm being, I don't know. So, anyway, I had to get that out there, and I'm still processing that, and how I want to compare it. Because I do, it is still early on. We're halfway through. There's 3 more episodes to go. I want to see, you know, how they fully get through it. Because I watched a few interviews now. I was holding off watching interviews. And now that I've watched some more interviews, I do know the writer said he has changed some more things in the second half, that he maybe is making it a little more angsty. So I want to see what that means in the second half. But goddamn, it's so romantic and pining and everything. So I've said this 3 times. Heated Rivalry, what is it? Why did I love it so much? And why do you need to read it? So Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed is book 2 in the Game Changer series. Do you need to read Game Changers first? You absolutely can if you want to. I did. I read it 3 years ago, as I said, and it was just okay for me. The thing is, Heated Rivalry technically takes place before Game Changer does, and I'll tell you why in a second. And I kind of wish that I had started with Heated Rivalry. Now, I don't remember this perfectly, but I'm pretty positive that I started with Game Changer being stubborn, okay? I don't know this for sure, but I'm usually pretty stubborn about starting with the first book in a series, okay? I know that about myself. I could see myself doing that. And I can see myself, if a viewer was like, read Heated Rivalry, and I look it up and it says book 2, and me being like, oh, I got to read book 1 first, right? And I'll read book 2. And then Game Changers was like, just okay. It was sweet. It was cute. It was perfectly fine. Scott and Kip, they are so sweet, but they're not the same as Shane and Ilya, okay? Ilya, it's really Ilya. I'm just saying, it's really Ilya paired with Shane. That's like this Russian hot-headed sex machine with a secret soft gooey inside he's everything, okay? He's my precious. We must protect him. We must protect him. And so Scott and Kip was just like the classic, you know, one person in the sport, one outside, hide it. And I have a feeling that someone recommended, again, I don't recall, but I have a feeling someone probably recommended Heated Rivalry, and I started with Game Changer, and it was just okay, and so I didn't continue. So I'm here to tell you that you should probably start with Heated Rivalry. Because again, it begins the timeline because Ilya and Shane are rival hockey players. This whole tale actually starts when they're like 17, before they're even like drafted into the NHL, and when they're 17 and they're each other's biggest rivals. They're drafted 1 and 2. They're put on rival teams. And so they have these very like sporadic meetings with each other. And so their story really kind of escalates kind of quickly. Like we go through time very quickly, but just to like show this, like from the beginning of Heated Rivalry to the end of the long game is about 12 years. Okay. But the long game takes place in a shorter amount of time. Heated Rivalry takes place over, I think, about 8 years because they don't see each other much. They have these interactions that are very intense but brief, and then they have interactions where they're playing against each other, and they're kind of, mostly Ilya is like fucking with Shane's head, getting in his head, very flirty with him. And then there are a few incidents where things first kind of get physical. There's one where they're like working out at the same hotel gym. There's one where it's like draft weekend. There's one where they go to invite each other up to a hotel and they like get each other off for the first. And then I think the first time they like have sex is at like, they have like an all-star game or something. But then there's a few years where they only have like text conversations. So anyway, I don't want to spoil the entire thing, but the point is their story is taking place over a long time. And Rachel does a really good job of like that you feel that time, but you also know like they're very busy, but you also know that they're always in each other's minds, right? Because when they're not playing hockey, they're training for hockey and they're trying to put their career forward and they're always competing against one another and they're, trying to be the best and they're trying to get their team to get the Stanley Cup and only one of them can be against each other. And what really makes their relationship so much harder than, let's say, what will happen for Scott, which is the game changer relationship, which will come about in his story. In his story, the reason why his is like first though, is Scott Hunter, I'll say this, Scott Hunter is like a veteran player, okay? So his romance doesn't happen, let's say, until like, I think it's like in 2014. Ilya and Shane stuff starts happening in like 2008, let's say. But it's a slow boil and it's like happening. But Scott Hunter's been around for a long time and he's been repressed for a very long time and he's about to retire. So him coming out and saying he's in love with a man, which is what his story's about, is like, finally going to come out. That's going to mean a lot to younger men like Shane and Ilya, that someone who's a veteran player could come out and be supported. What might that mean for Shane and Ilya, that like, oh my gosh, it's okay for them to be gay in hockey. Like we could be supported if we do that. But there's still the impediment of they're on rival teams. They've been enemies for how many years? It's not just that they would come out as queer. If they came out as lovers, as boyfriends, as partners, how would that undermine their entire careers if it came out that they'd loved each other all this time? So that's a very like brief overview of a very long and complicated thing, right? So now let me drill down just a little bit more of like why it's so good. Because not everyone, and myself included, why I didn't know if this was something that I would like, probably why I didn't continue this series back then. Because I do not always enjoy reading a we have to stay in the closet story, right? I used to enjoy those more when I first read Romance, because like the secrecy and the forbiddenness, but it can just be really hard to read, right? Even though it can be a lot of people's like lived experiences and it's really true, it's just hard to read someone having to hide who they really are. And I just want to read people being, you know, out and proud and maybe having to deal with what their families think about it or this, that, or whatever. But I don't like when they have to hide, or when one person is having to hide while the other person is out, or pretending you don't know the person in public, or things like that are really hard to read, right? I just don't enjoy reading those. It's one of the reasons I really enjoy like Tal Bauer, because the characters in his books are always like super supportive of everything, you know? So I don't enjoy reading that all the time, I'll be honest. But, and I mean, that is what this is. There's literally one of the books is called The Long Game, because they have like a very, I don't want to spoil it. They have a very detailed plan for how long it's going to take before they're able to be together. But what makes it work, to me, is Ilya. Okay. Ilya Rozanov, I think is how you say his name, is a fantastic character. And Shane is too. Okay. Shane is a great character too. But Ilya is bisexual. He's very complicated. He's Russian. He is what we'd see as our bad boy. He smokes. He's very talented at what he does. He's the one kind of always fucking with Shane. We don't know in the beginning, is he just doing this to fuck with Shane? Is Shane more into him than he's into Shane? Is he just toying with him? You know, is this just a game? Is he fucking 10 other people at the same time? Like, you just don't know. But then you get these glimpses into Ilya's mind, and this man is counting Shane's freckles. And this guy is just giving anything to, how do I even, like, this man is in deep, okay? I don't know another way to say this, without just starting to list it all, but like, oh my God, the depth of feeling, particularly in the long game, that Ilya has. And it's not that Shane doesn't have it too. He just is a bit better at like prioritizing it, okay? Because Shane does feel deeply for Ilya too. He really does. But Ilya doesn't have anything else but Shane. And so I don't think that Shane really realizes, until a certain point anyway, what Ilya would give up for him. But we as the reader, we see it pretty clearly. And so it can make you frustrated with Shane at points. And there are points in the long game where we're like, Ilya, you deserve better. Particularly some things that Ilya does. You're like, Shane, do you not understand? I won't say them, but if you've read the long game, you know. There's some things that this man who, particularly like anyone would say is the most talented man in the game, some choices he makes for Shane, you're like, dude, what are you doing? But gosh, he loves so big. He loves so big. So God, I just love it. And I really hope they do a season 2 or 3 so we can see that progression, because already just a few interviews I've seen with Connor Story, who's playing Ilya, he's already really zoned in on that, where he says he's like, he's tapped into how, because Ilya is Russian and his English isn't good yet, it does develop, you know, over time, right? And being in Canada longer and longer, and having a partner who is Canadian and learning it more, he's not able to fully like share his depth of feeling as easily. So a lot of that comes off as stoicism or as like hiding it back. But there'll be these tender moments, and we as the reader, you know, in Ilya's head, we don't have a communication barrier. We get to see all of it. And his depth of feeling for Shane. is so great. Like, he has such a big heart. And when he's younger, he's really trying to protect that more. Like, he really is trying to protect that more. And that's really what the struggle more is in Heated Rivalry. And then in the long game, it's really about, like, how are we gonna do this? But anyway, particularly in the long game, there was a scene where, like, these two, like, they fight all the time. Like, they bicker all the time. It's really fun. Their banter is great. Ilya is such a shit and, like, he knows how to rile Shane up. But there's a fight that they have when Ilya is really reaching the breaking point, right? He's been a very, very patient, dedicated, loving partner. And he's reaching his point and he's asking for something. And Shane is he's just missing it. And I just was, like, weeping for him. Because I don't want him to leave Shane. I don't want him to go find better, because these two are meant to be. Like, they are. They are each other's other half. They're meant to be. But Shane needs to, like, get this. Because Ilya deserves that, right? Ilya's always seemed like the bad boy who needs to fix this or do this or be better, but honestly, he's done the work and he's been patient, and it's just so good. So I really hope they are able to get to play that out. And right now on the show, like, damn, that you're already seeing glimpses of that. That they are going to do the full, like, romantic range of this, right? Like, right now, we're at the stubborn, flirty, like, you know, emotionally repressed, like, this is just fucking, we can't have feelings. So there's a lot of, like, fuck and leave that's going on. And that's what happens in the book, because they're rivals and they're only in the same city for a night at a time, and that's what's going on. But in their heads, we know what's happening. And God, these actors are so good, you guys. They're so good, because I'm telling you, when I watched those 2 episodes and then I picked up the book and I started off, they are conveying so much of the emotion that the book, you know, is able to give us. They're conveying so much of the emotion in their physical acting. Like, they're doing such a good job of it. And in, like, I don't know. So anyway, I had to ramble about that. I'm obsessed, you guys. I love it. And so much so I'm going to put a link down below to HBO. Okay, I'm going to put the link down below, because you should do yourself a favor and watch this. Because it's hot and it was romantic, okay? And you're just going to squeal like a schoolgirl, and then go get the ebook or the audiobook of Heated Rivalry and The Long Game. The only thing I'll say is, so I didn't do the audiobooks of these ones, because again, I already had Heated Rivalry, the ebook bought, and then I had some credits, so I was able to use that for half of The Long Game, because these aren't on KU, and the physical books aren't, like, available right now for The Long Game in the United States, at least. They're on back order for everything. Because again, they fucked up with that and everything. They don't have it in stock, and to go back to, we want the movie tie-in covers or the TV tie-in. I'm hoping that the reason there hasn't been a restock yet is because they're going to be printing those, because what are you doing? Like, these were Harlequin books. Give us the smutty covers. They had smutty covers to start with. The cartoon covers are fine, but why wouldn't you make movie tie-in covers with the sexy boys on the front? Like, just do it. Do it now, okay? Do it now. But what was I saying? Oh, but the audiobooks, I believe, are single narrator, and these are dual narrated third person, and there isn't, like, they don't tell you when it changes perspective. And I remember that being confusing when I listened to it before. So just know, like, if you're an audiobook listener and you listen on like a higher speed like I do, it can be confusing when they switch POVs if you listen. But just doing that. Okay, we got him. Next up, as I mentioned, I was also, I listened to Mountain Grump by S.J. Tilley. This was book 3, and apparently it's the end of this series, maybe. Someone was saying it was in her mountain series. This one was a park ranger, and this woman who's just moved to the area. This one is Matilda, or Tilda as she goes by. This was duet narrated, of course, by Connor Craze and Aaron Mallon. They are a staple for S.J. Tilley. And Tilda has just moved there because her great uncle Jack has just left her his cabin and actually a good amount of his money to get her out of Vegas is where she was living. And their family is pretty like abusive to her, actually. And so he wanted to get her away from their family and give her a fresh start. And so he gave her $20,000, his cabin and his truck. And he's like, this is enough to give you a fresh start. So he's moved her there. And he also ends up sending her, so Ethan has a plane. He's a pilot. And he also contracts Ethan to fly her to Vegas, I think like a couple weeks in, for the reading of his will. And at the reading of the will, it turns out he had more than just $20,000 to give her. He actually had invested his money well, and he has $2 million to give her if she will get married. And then she will get 1/4 of the money on every birthday for the next 4 years. But the trick is she has to be married, I think, like by her birthday, which is in 2 days or something. So he basically set her up to marry Ethan. And at this point, like, I'm skipping like ahead a bit because her and Ethan had already been having interactions with each other, and there were some kind of sexy interactions they'd had as well. And so they were already kind of attracted to each other and had been kind of having the feels for each other. And her family was like, what? You're lying. You don't have a boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, actually, I have someone I can marry, and he's waiting outside the room. And so they go to a chapel and get married right then. And her family is just outraged and blah, blah, blah. And so they get married. And then on the way home, they end up having to basically like crash land in the wilderness and spend a couple nights in a cabin waiting for a rescue out there. Because of course they crash land near a cabin out there. Yeah. And then the rest of the story is just them like falling in love and her finding out that her uncle set this whole thing up, and does Ethan really love her if Jack is the one who set this up, and blah, blah, blah. So this one was really sweet. And the thing is like, I think I like this more than the other two. Maybe I like the first one better. Maybe I like Mountain Boss better. I don't know. I thought I was liking it better. The thing is the third act was like so dumb to me. I hate saying that. But this is the same thing that happened with Mountain Daddy to me. Because it was so obvious what she was going to do. And I hate being a bitch about this. But it was literally so obvious, okay? Like, Jack, the great uncle, had left a letter for Ethan about, like, please take care of my Maddie, that's what he called Matilda, was his Maddie. And he was like, I will pay you to do this trip for her and look out for her. And it was also Jack wanting to leave Ethan some money, too. And Ethan, in his head, he's like, you don't got to pay me to take care of Maddie. I got my own money. And so he had crumpled up the letter and, like, threw it in the garbage. Well, who do you think's going to find the letter that says, which says that Jack paid him to take care of Maddie? And so what do you think the third act conflict is going to be? And it was just so stupid. And then the way that S.J. Tilley writes her chapters, right? So literally chapter, like, what are we at? 180 to 190 are each 2 sentences, each of them being like, I miss him. The duck is quacking and she misses him too. Chapter 180, I miss her. I miss the duck quacking. Chapter 182, I miss his shirt smelling like him now. Chapter 193, I miss her wearing my shirts. Because she does these like 2-sentence chapters. I know I'm being a bitch about it. I don't care. It frustrates me because I like the stories as she sets them up. Like, this one was fun. I like these characters. I like that they got crash landed there. Like, I liked that he chased away her shitty family. I think it would have been cooler if, like, her family had tried to put a wedge between them about the uncle. Not that he left a fucking note in the garbage and didn't just burn it in the fire. Like, if her family had showed up trying to drive the wedge. Not her finding a piece of paper when he's in the shower and her immediately, like, jumping to a conclusion about it. Like, it just was, I don't know. And then you add that into, like, how long the book is. But then, I don't know, I come back around to it. I still gave it 4 stars because I loved 80% of this book. It's just they're always too long. And this one didn't need a 3rd act breakup, right? And she did that in book 2 as well. There was a stupid 3rd act breakup in that one. And there doesn't need to be 200 chapters in any book. That doesn't need to exist. It feels like you're stuffing the pages of your KU to make it 600 plus pages for flip length because each chapter needs to be new, you know? And that stuff starts to piss me off. It just starts to piss me off. So we're moving along because this is going to be an over an hour and I hate bitching, but I did love that she would call him good boy when he was doing something and that got him really hot, but it wasn't a fully like change up or anything. Okay. Next up, we had In the Game by Sloane St. James, and we know I love my Sloane St. James. This was a great one. This was the last one I hadn't read. For December, I do need to reread Stand and Defend to annotate it. But I annotated this one for one of my patrons. This one was book 3 in the Lakes Hockey series, which was really fun because I started annotating this one on our trip to the Great Lakes. So that was cool. But yeah, this one was a accidental pregnancy between Raleigh and Barrett. This is a hockey romance too. I ended up reading a lot of hockey romance while I was in Minnesota, which was cool. And this was an age gap, and our heroine actually is a puck bunny, okay? Like, she admits it. So it was a bit of like a rocky start kind of thing because she loves sleeping around, and I don't have a problem with that at all. Like, that's fine. She admits it in the beginning. And she even says, she's like, I love the comfort that I get from it. I like some good sex. She's like, I love hockey guys. They're big. They can throw me around. It's usually good sex. I have a great time. She's like, I don't sleep with the home team because I don't want to, like, see him around. But then she meets Barrett, and they have a really horrible and wonderful, like, first experience because they have this really great connection. And it just, like, their interactions are great, but, like, their food gets burned, their Uber, like, gets a flat tire and runs out of gas, and it's just so silly, but they end up having this, like, great sex together. But, like, during the sex, he, like, calls her Bunny, and that, like, offends her, which I thought was a weird choice because she's said she's a bunny, but then when they're in the middle of fucking and he, like, calls her Bunny, she's like, oh, he's putting me in my place, when, like, literally the dude's, like, mid-orgasm. He's not trying to degrade you with that. And in his mind, he's literally like, this is my perfect woman. She was so fun. He's literally, like, obsessed. And again, this whole night had lasted, like, a long time. He was so into her. And she snuck out without leaving her number. And he wakes up and the condom had broke. Of course, because this is an accidental pregnancy. And he wakes up the next day and she's gone and he can't find her anywhere. In fact, he even lets the next day, not right away the next day, but he lets his, like, social media person know that if a woman named Raleigh tries to contact him, he wants to talk to her. But this woman is also interested in him, his social media person. So we're just supposed to remember that person might end up fucking with her. It's a possibility. We'll see. And anyway, Raleigh ends up discovering she's pregnant, and she does try to reach out to him. She ends up getting told off. He says horrible things to her. He says horrible things to her. She then tries calling him and gets the runaround from his PR team that if she tries to call again, they'll get a restraining order. We skip ahead 5 years. She'd had the baby on her own. And then 5 years later, he'd never stopped trying to find her. And they run into each other, and she has a 4.5-year-old. And it's his. And I'm like skipping through this stuff because it's all like things you've seen, but he does all the right things when he runs into her again. He's righteously angry. He can't believe she wouldn't tell him. She's like, fuck off. Your PR was horrible to me. He's like, I literally don't know what you're talking about. He's like, ask any of my friends. I've been trying to find you. You know how hard it is to find someone named Raleigh. Like, you didn't give me your last name. Like, I couldn't find you. And she doesn't believe him. He's like, that's not my social media handle. That is a fake. Like, and then, though it is true that she did talk to someone. So I won't tell you who it was who was messaging her on behalf of him, because that actually wasn't the social media person. It was the PR person who talked to her on the phone, though, who scared her away. And fuck that person for doing that when she tried calling to talk to him, because she didn't fully trust the messages. She tried calling a few times and still couldn't get through. But she is a successful like assistant to this one guy now, and they do like PR events and things like that. And he at first, of course, is really pissed that she tried to keep him a secret. But because it's Sloane St. James at this point, I adore everything she does, apparently. I love it. I love her. He is like, this is devastating, and please let me prove to you that A, I had nothing to do with this, and B, I want to be a part of his life. However you'll let me. I so want this, and let me be part of it. Now, also, he is, I believe, 38, so he is near the end of his career anyway. So that was also a cool journey, because this was also an age gap. Like, when they hooked up, she was 22, and he was, I think, what would he have been, like 33, or 34. And so now he's about ready to retire anyway. So he's literally ready to get his head in the game, in the right game, right? So I just loved it. This was another 5-star. This was just so beautiful. And yeah, it takes her some time to trust him and to build that up, but he does everything right. And again, when we find out who actually fucked things up, there will be hell to pay, man. Yeah, this had some great, beautiful, intimate moments in here. There's one scene in here particularly, I'll tell you, where they try out together every single one of the sex toys that she has until she literally has to safe out. And it was really hot. There was also, of course, squirting. Sloane St. James doesn't write a book without squirting. Love it. And yeah, just some great, beautiful, intimate scenes. Seeing him with their kid. The kid is adorable. Love the whole thing. It was 5 stars. I told you, it was a great reading week. Even me bitching about Mountain Grump, like, that was still a good book. I was just annoyed at the ending. And then the last book I finished last night, was a new release, which was When We Fall by Lena Hendricks. This is book 2 in Star Harbor. This one was a older woman, single mom. I believe she's 36 and he was 28. This is Austin and Celine. And this one, Austin is the younger brother of the hero from the last one, and Celine is the sister of the hero from the last one. And Celine, her daughter, I can't remember how old she is, but Celine is working on a project for the Historical Society. She's divorced from her husband. He's a professor and not super interested in their child that they have together, and kind of a tool. But Austin and her actually had not a one-night stand, but they kind of fooled around at a jazz bar not too long ago. And now he ends up moving into the other half of the duplex that she lives in. And when her nanny up and quits, he ends up volunteering to help her out in the mornings and afternoons. So he works a construction job part-time, and he helps get the little girl ready for school and then picks her up from school so Celine can get some uninterrupted work time. And yeah, and then they start to fall, and he is just so great. So what was beautiful about this, though, is that, so Austin has a really complicated relationship with his brother, and we got a peek of that in book 1, though you can read this as a standalone, like a lot of small town romances. He was actually the son of an affair that his father had. So the guy, I can't remember his name now, I'm sorry, but the hero from book 1, the dad had like a second family. And so Austin didn't get to spend a lot of time with his dad. And his mom kind of resented Austin for existing. And the dad never spent much time with them because his main family was who he spent time with. And when in town he would run in, you know, if they would see his dad around, like his dad would ignore him because they were the, like, so he was literally the bastard son of this guy. And it wasn't until he was older that he's tried to work things out with his brother, and they're still working on that relationship because, you know, he has a lot of bitterness towards his dad for how he treated his mom, and I mean, for the fact that he was a cheater and everything, and for a long time things just weren't right. So he's felt very abandoned and like he wasn't chosen. And Celine has never felt like men have really chosen her in her life either. And she doesn't know if she can trust a man who's like younger than her and not like stable in his life, and doesn't want to risk her daughter being let down. And yeah, all of those things. So it was really beautiful though. You know, this kind of like age gap, like, yeah, I guess it's 8 years, but also for me, once we're like above the like 22 age for the guy, I'm like, it's not like he's a teenager to act like he's so young and doesn't know what he wants. I'm like, lady, come on, like, knock it off. You know, if the dude says he wants a kid, I believe by 28 he knows if he wants a kid. Like, you know, the kid, I think she's like 5 or 6. She could be his kid, right? Like, I have friends that are 28 and have a 5-year-old, you know? So that's not impossible, right? It's not like you're 30 dating an 18-year-old and you have a 5-year-old and it's weird. You know what I mean? So yeah. And you could be dating a 40-year-old who's not ready to have a 5-year-old. So I don't know. He was great with the kid. It doesn't matter to me. So I gave that one 4 stars as well because I just was kind of like bored in parts of it, honestly. But I think it was a quieter romance and more emotional, and I think that will really work for some people. I appreciate that about Lena Hendricks with this series. Well, with this book, the first one had a lot more actually kind of like, not action, but like things going on in it. And so did the series before this one. This book was a lot quieter, and I think that was good. I like that it just fit these characters better for it to be quieter. So I think that shows good range in the author to not have to put out the same story every time, right? That's something we talk about. We want to see that range. So anyway, well, this one ended up long enough. But like I said, I had to rant, and in a good way. I had to gush about Heated Rivalry. And I would love to hear your thoughts if you liked it. And like I said, let me know if you would like me to make a video about that. Again, it would probably be in like January because I want to watch the whole series. And then I kind of want to think about it because I want to compare it to a few other adaptation shows that like I've watched, which I know I haven't watched a ton, but I would compare it to, I'm just putting this out there, I would compare it to like the experience I had watching like The Hating Game, like a 50 Shades of Grey type thing, Bridgerton, and then like he did Rivalry. Like these were all made supposedly for the romance community. And just like if we think they succeeded in what they were trying to do, and if they tried to hijack it for something else, and if that succeeded, and if it brought more fans to romance, or if it like pissed off the fan base or brought people in, like I would just think that's interesting. So anywho, thank you so much for watching, friends. I will see you